Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Shubham, and today I'm gonna talk about one more important topic, that is the herpes zoster, which is also called as the shingles. So if you talk about the herpes zoster or shingles, it is basically classified under varicella zoster virus. Okay, so it is basically classified under varicella zoster virus, VZV, right? VZV is nothing but your varicella zoster virus. I'm sure everybody must have heard about this. What is the varicella zoster virus, right? So if you talk about the characteristics of the varicella zoster virus, then you will be knowing that this is the enveloped virus. Okay, if you will see the structure, we'll talk about that. This is the enveloped virus. It is having the envelope surrounding it and having the very important linear double-stranded DNA virus. Okay, linear double-stranded DNA virus. Okay, and the other name of this virus is, it is also popularly called as the human herpes virus 3, HHV3. So other name of this virus is HHV3, human herpes virus 3. So if you talk about the structure of this virus, varicella zoster virus, so basically what happens is, in the children age group it is causing the chickenpox, and in the adult age group it is causing the shingles or herpes zoster. So if you talk about the structure, first of all we are having an envelope surrounding it, that is the lipid envelope, right? So here we can see there is a lipid envelope which is surrounding it, right? So here you can see there is a layer of the lipid present over there, right? Then you can see inside it, if you will go, there is a tegument present over there, right? But inside it you will be going, then you will be finding the nucleocapsid, and inside the nucleocapsid there is a green color structure which you can see double-stranded DNA virus. Okay, so there is a double-stranded DNA genome present over there, right? So there is a double-stranded DNA virus present over there. That is the important characteristic, right? And then you can see on the outside there is a spikes present over there, glycoprotein spikes, which helps this virus to actually attach to the cell surface, right? So this is a simple structure of the varicella zoster virus. Mainly you need to understand that there is a lipid envelope which is surrounding it, and then inside it we are having a double-stranded DNA. There is a double-stranded DNA virus, right? Now, and this is also called as a human herpes virus 3, HHV3. Now if you talk about the transmission of this virus, this is very easily can transmit by the help of respiratory secretions, right? So if somebody have this virus, if they will be coughing, sneezing and talking to someone, they can easily transmit this virus to the another person. So that's why it can be easily transmitted by the respiratory secretions. Okay, can be easily transmitted by the any kind of respiratory secretions, for example while coughing, talking or sneezing, something like that. And other thing is, if the person is coming in direct contact with these kind of skin lesions. What kind of skin lesions I'm talking about, I will talk about that in a moment. But if these persons are actually having a direct contact with these skin lesions, okay, for example if somebody touches those skin lesions, okay, it's very important that you are washing the hands after that, because it might transmit by the help of direct contact also. So direct contact, if it is happening direct contact with those skin lesions, we'll talk about that shortly. What are those skin lesions? Fine. Now another thing I told you that this virus can easily can cause chickenpox virus in the varicella zoster virus I'm talking about right now. So it can cause chickenpox virus. Okay, it can cause actually chickenpox in children's age group basically. Okay, all of you in your childhood, you might be having the chickenpox. Okay, that much common it is. And in the adult age group it is causing the shingles or herpes zoster. Okay, so shingles in the adults age group, right? So in between that period of time something might have happened, right? We'll talk about that. Other than that, in children's chickenpox, in adults shingles. Other than that, it can cause encephalitis. Okay, it can cause encephalitis, but it is not that common. Encephalitis can be there, meningitis can be there. In some patients some respiratory complications might come, for example pneumonia and all might be there. Okay, but in what patients? Only in immunocompromised I'm talking about, immunocompromised, right? For example HIV patients are there, right? HIV patients are there, hepatitis patients are there. So in those patients it can be seen. So immunocompromised patient, right? As you know that these kind of things, because immunity is compromised, so these things can happen. Otherwise what you need to understand is that in the adult age group shingles, right, and in the children age group chickenpox might happen. Okay, understood. Then next point over here is that, you know, if you talk about the gender, okay, then, you know, it is more common in men as compared to women. However, it affects both population, but epidemiologically man is more prone for getting this virus as compared to the woman, right? Now, what are the risk factors? Obviously, if the immunity is compromised of some kind of person, okay, already sick patient, then if the person age is you know, advanced age people, for example, elderly age people are more prone for getting this, okay, or the person might have the infection in the past with the varicella zoster virus. Those persons can also be you know, having this particular virus again, right? Now, if you talk about basically the pathogenesis, okay, very important part. So if you talk about the pathogenesis over here, right, pathogenesis, so what we can understand from that. So first of all, what happens is there is a virus, okay, this is what, there is a virus. This virus will be infecting the cell present over there. What is this cell? What is this cell? This is the T cell, right? What is this cell? This is the T cell. After, okay, once it affects the T cell, then what will happen? Your T cells will be having this virus, and then, you know, this virus may persist in your body. But main thing over here is that even if it heals, then it doesn't disappear from your body. Actually, it will be there. So it will be having the latency period. So it will be latent in the dorsal root ganglia. Okay, it will be latent in the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, dorsal root ganglia, or it will be latent in the trigeminal ganglia. Okay, other name of this one is trigeminal ganglia, and it can reactivate itself later on. Okay, for example, virus infects the T cells in your childhood age group, and you got the chickenpox. Once you got the medications and all, we'll talk about that medication. Once you got the all medications and all, basically acyclovir and all, so you will be healed after that. But virus is not disappeared at that point of time. Virus will hibernate itself. So virus will be actually hiding in the dorsal root ganglia or the trigeminal ganglia. And you know, when you will be achieving the adult age group, for example, now you're 25 or 30 or something like that, then what will happen is that, you know, this virus can actually, whenever you will be getting sick, for example, so in that immunocompromised state, when your body's immunity is not that proper, so in that kind of case, this particular virus can get reactivate itself, and then it can affect your body, okay, next time as well. So in that case, if it is affecting in the adult age group, then we are saying this is the shingles, okay, and some kind of pattern will be seen on your skin. We'll talk about that. So that is the case over here. So once your body will be having the immunocompromised state, then it can reactivate itself. So after this point of time, it can reactivate itself. Okay, it can reactivate itself. Okay, I hope you got the concept over here. Fine. So that is the pathogenesis of this particular virus. Basically, immunocompromised state. So here I am writing as well, if the patient's immunity is compromised. So immunocompromised patient. If there will be the immunocompromised state, okay, then it can reactivate itself, this virus, right? Okay, fine, everything is clear over here. For the prophylaxis purpose, okay, for the prophylaxis purpose, what we can do is, there is a vaccines available over there. Okay, vaccines available over there in the US and all, they are getting the vaccines as well. Okay, two kinds of variants are available. One is the recombinant vaccine. Okay, one is the recombinant vaccine available over there. Okay, and another one is the recombinant vaccine, another one is the live vaccine. Okay, one is the recombinant, another one is the live vaccine. If you talk about the recombinant vaccine, then the adults can get this vaccine more than 50 years of age. Okay, more than 50 years of age. And if you talk about the live vaccine, those adults can get this vaccine who are having the age above 60 years. Okay, so two options are available for the prophylaxis purpose, for the prevention purpose, as far as herpes zoster virus is concerned. herpes zoster is concerned, singles, which is happening in the adults population caused by the varicella zoster virus. Okay, fine. So usually what happens is it takes around it takes around I would say 4 to 6 weeks to completely heal actually, so around a month, right? Now how the patient will be presenting. Okay, we have talked about that much things, how the patient will be presenting now. So let's talk about the presentation part also. Okay, so if you talk about the presentation, then how the patient will be presenting, let's talk about that as well. So basically these kind of persons are having symptoms like, okay, so first of all, symptoms, they will be complaining of usually that they are having the painful rash, and in that rash there is a itching persisting over there, itching is there, redness is there. Okay, basically there will be the redness present over there, and this is the painful rash present over there on the skin. Okay, so if you talk about the characteristics of these rashes, let's talk about that, what kind of rashes are they. Okay, so basically if you talk about this rash, then they will be unilateral. Okay, they will be unilateral on one side of the body. These rashes will be present over there, unilateral lesions will be there, unilateral rashes will be present over there. Okay, and other characteristic of these rashes are, they are dermatomal. Okay, what do I mean by dermatomal? And most commonly in the thoracic region. Dermatomal means particular dermatome they will be following. For example, thoracic region they will follow only on the thoracic region, but it differs from person to person. Somebody might be getting on the abdominal region as well, or somebody might be getting on the both thoracic as well as abdominal region as well. Unilateral means on the one side. Look at this rash present over here. Okay, as you can see on this side the rashes are not present. From here to here the rashes are present in going this particular dermatome. Okay, in going this particular fashion, so getting the particular dermatome they are following, and this is the thoracic region. I can assume this is the thoracic region, isn't it? So particular dermatome it is following, and these kind of rashes you can actually see over there. What are the other characteristics of these rashes? You can see easily over there that these are the painful rashes, as I told you. These are the painful, as I am talking about the herpes virus. So there you will be seeing the vesicles. So painful grouped vesicles you will be seeing, right? Painful grouped vesicles. Vesicles means fluid filled lesions. Clear fluid will be present over there. So vesicles will be there, painful over red base. So you can see red colored red colored rashes are there. And can you appreciate over here the vesicles? Okay, I will be showing you. For example, this arrow you can see over there, right? These are the vesicles which are having the clear fluid filled inside them. Okay, clear fluid filled inside them. So over the red base you can see the clear fluid filled lesions. These are the vesicles which are present on the over the red base, particularly following the particular dermatome, and present in the basically the thoracic region. Okay, most commonly present in thoracic region. It is the unilateral rash, isn't it? Unilateral. So most commonly unilateral. So easily you can identify these kind of rashes. Okay, I hope there is no problem with that. Now moving further from here, once we have talked about the how this rash is looking like. Okay, we know that it does not cross the midline. So basically if you will imagine the midline over here, for example, this is the midline, right? This is the midline. So it is not crossing the midline, it is present on the unilateral side only, right? Okay, understood. Now let's move further and let's talk about the other complications of it. Complication means it can further affect two more particular things over there, two more particular regions. Let's talk about them as well. So if it is affecting your eye, okay, if it is affecting your eye, we are coming up with the name of that particular thing, that is the herpes zoster, because we are talking about herpes zoster. If it is particularly affecting the eye, then we are saying it as herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Okay, herpes zoster ophthalmicus, very easy. Ophthalmicus, ophthalma means eyes, right? So that's why herpes zoster ophthalmicus if it is involving the eye. Okay, so basically if you talk about the herpes zoster ophthalmicus, which you need to understand, what you need to understand over here is, what you need to know over here is that it is involving which nerve? It is involving the trigeminal nerve over here. Which branch of the trigeminal nerve over here? Okay, so it is basically the cranial nerve, fifth. Okay, fifth cranial nerve is involved over here. Fifth is the trigeminal one. Okay, so it is the, in the trigeminal we know V1, V2, V3. V1 is applying the ophthalmic one, okay, ophthalmic nerve, right, and V2 is for the maxillary, V3 is for the mandibular nerve, right. So it is the V1 branch of the trigeminal nerve. So which one? This is affecting which nerve? This is affecting the V1. What is V1? V1 is the frontal branch of ophthalmic nerve or trigeminal nerve, okay. Okay, this is the V1 branch of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, understood. Then what I need to know is, this kind of particular lesion, as I said, herpes zoster is unilateral. It affects the only one side, either left side, either right side, and does not cross the midline usually. So what kind of lesion you can expect over here? As you can see, the eye is involved, isn't it? So as you can see, if you will again make the midline over here, let's say this is the midline. As you can see, this is not crossing the midline, right, present on the unilateral side over there and involving the eye. Okay, here one thing you need to understand, that if the vesicles they are involving the tip of the nose as well, if they're involving the tip of the nose as well, then there is an increased chances that cornea might be involved as well in these kind of persons. Cornea of the eye might also be involved by this virus. It means this is the severely affected eye in this case of particular virus, right. So in this patient particularly, eye has been involved severely by the herpes zoster, by the varicella zoster, right. So that is the case over here. So if the tip of the, so what I'm saying is, I'm just writing over here as well. So I'm saying if the, okay, I'm saying over here is, if the vesicle is present over the tip of the nose, okay, vesicle is also present over the tip of the nose or side of the nose, right. This means that this person might be having the involvement of corneal, this person cornea. So corneal involvement might be present over there, okay. Corneal involvement might be present, which is not the good sign for us, obviously, okay. So once we have understood this, it means we know that what is happening in the herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Now if this herpes zoster is affecting the ears, then what might have happened? Herpes zoster, if it was affecting the eye, then it was herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Now if it will be affecting the ears, then we are writing it as herpes zoster oticus or oticus, okay, whatever you want to call it, herpes zoster oticus, right. So this was herpes zoster ophthalmicus, this is the herpes zoster oticus, okay. So now what's happening? Again, vesicles will be present over here also, right, unilateral again. So over here what is happening, the ears are involved over there. The vesicles, clear fluid filled lesions are actually present over the vesicles, over the red base, they are present on the one side of the ear, okay, one side of the body. So on one ear they will be having that, right. And basically they are involving over here, these are the external auditory canal. Usually what we are saying is, usually the vesicles are present over the external auditory canal, okay, over the EAC. EAC is nothing but external auditory canal, right, usually. However, it is present on the pinna also, it might present on the pinna also, it may present outside also, but usually it is present over there. External ear it is involving, right. Then what you need to understand about this one, it might involve the ear. Which nerve is involved? I told you there was a trigeminal nerve which was involving in the eye, and over here which nerve is involved? That is the facial nerve. This is the seventh nerve. So which nerve is involved over here? That is the seventh one, and this is your facial nerve, right. Okay, understood about that. Now what else? One more complication is actually you can think of, that is the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, okay. But before that, let me talk about one more important point over here, okay. If you talk about the ganglia, then geniculate ganglion is involved over here, okay. Geniculate ganglion is involved over here. So geniculate ganglion involvement is present in these cases, might be present in these cases, right? So now I'm talking about one more important thing related to this one also, only herpes zoster ticus, that is, it is also called as the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Okay, Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Now what do I mean by Ramsay-Hunt syndrome? Ramsay-Hunt syndrome is having the triad basically, and let's talk about that triad as well. So Ramsay-Hunt syndrome, right? So Ramsay-Hunt syndrome is having a triad which you can see on your screen right now. Here you are seeing the vesicular rash are present on the external ear, that is first point over here. Okay, then secondly you will be seeing that there is a paralysis on one side. Okay, so that is a facial nerve involvement. So here we will be having the facial nerve palsy, so lower motor neuron palsy on the of the facial nerve basically. And third thing over here which you can see, that there can be the loss of taste sensation over 2/3 of the tongue. Okay, loss of taste sensation over the 2/3 of the, so again this is the midline. Okay, this is the midline and it is not crossing the midlines. Is a unilateral thing which is present over there. So vesicular rash, lower motor neuron paralysis and loss of taste sensation. This is the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Three things are present over there in the Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Okay, so once this thing is clear in our mind, then let's move on towards the investigations part. Okay, towards the investigation part. So if you talk about the investigation, then we know that what might have happened over here. In the investigation, basically the virus is present. So for the investigation purpose, we want to check the status of this virus. So investigation. Now we know that there is a virus. So for the virus usually we are doing the PCR, right? You know that for the virus we are doing the PCR, but before that very important test is available right now, that is the Zinc smear. Okay, T silent Zinc smear. In the Zinc smear, what I want to know is, in the Zinc smear what we are seeing, actually there are the multinucleated giant cells present over there. Okay, what is present? Multinucleated giant cells. Okay, multinucleated giant cells are present over there. So as you can see, here is the multinucleated giant cell present over there, and this is the Zinc smear. And in the Zinc smear, here you can see the bigger cells. Okay, the bigger multinucleated giant cells can be easily appreciated over here, right? So this is the multinucleated giant cell present in the Zinc smear. Okay, other than that, of course, you can do the PCR in these patients. You can go for the polymerase chain reaction PCR. You can go for the fluorescent antibody staining, but that's enough, right? Usually we see that what the pattern of the skin lesion, this is the particular dermatome is involved, thoracic region, unilateral. So clearly we can make the diagnosis on the basis of clinical examination only, right? And to make a confirmed diagnosis, you can go for the lab examination, right? In some unusual kind of cases, you can go and take the help of the lab examination, for example Zinc smear and all. But if the diagnosis is clear in your mind clinically, then no need to go for that for making the diagnosis, right? So if you talk about the differentials over here, herpes simplex virus is very important differential you can think of, because herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, so locations are important. Herpes simplex virus 1 is present on the oral surface. Okay, oral lesions might be present. Herpes simplex virus 2, they can present on the genital region. So it is different if you talk about the herpes simplex and herpes zoster. Then you can think of other kind of differentials. Contact dermatitis is also one of them, but again in the contact dermatitis the history will be different. Now treatment part after the investigations. Okay, let's go to the treatment part. So if you talk about the treatment of these patients, okay, then for the herpes zoster, antivirals we are thinking of, because herpes simplex, herpes zoster, we are thinking of the antivirals. What antivirals we can think of over here is, yes, we can go for the oral antivirus. First of all, you are thinking of the oral antivirals. Okay, in the oral antivirals, what I can think of over here, I will be going with the acyclovir. Okay, most commonly used acyclovir. Then if acyclovir, some patients are, if some patient not responding to acyclovir, you can go with the valcyclovir. Okay, but acyclovir is more than enough. Acyclovir, then valcyclovir can be there, famciclovir can be used further. Okay, these are the options which are available, right? Okay, Other than that, oral antivirals are present, fine. Then IV antivirals are also available. Okay, IV antivirals are also available if the patient is not responding to the oral in some cases. In such cases, IV antivirals can be used. Again, acyclovir will be the drug which can be present over there. Okay, for example, some patients who are having the visceral involvement or CNS involvement, okay, these kind of patients can be used. Then analgesics, right? So for the pain management, you can give the analgesics to such patients, right? Analgesics can be there. Okay, fine. Let's talk about the last portion of this section. These are the complications of this particular herpes zoster. If you talk about the complications part in these kind of patients, then complication might be persist in those patients. Usually complications are not there, but complication might persist in those patients who are having the compromised immunity. So immunocompromised status might be having these kind of problems. So first one which you need to think of over here is that is the post herpetic neuralgia. Okay, so that is a post herpetic neuralgia, means after the herpes zoster, okay, there can be the neuralgia. What do I mean by that? For example, skin lesions. There was a skin lesion, unilateral, particular dermatome it was following thoracic region. You gave the acyclovir and all. After a week or after 2 or 3 weeks, these skin lesions have been resolved now, but the patient will be coming to you with complaints of that they, on touching that particular surface where the person was having the lesions, they are having the burning sensations over there. They're having the itchiness. They might have the burning sensation present over there in this particular region where the lesions were present previously. So this is called as a post-herpetic neuralgia. In some patient, over like about 20 to 30% of patient, they might be complaining of this kind of problem. This is one of the common complication which might happen. This is a post-herpetic neuralgia. Okay, and if there are some fetal complications are there. Okay, if the mother was having the herpes zoster and the baby might have the complication, for example, blindness can be there in some lethal cases. Okay, limb hypoplasia can be there. But these are the cases, but however these are the rare only. Okay, other than that, if the person was having the herpes zoster ophthalmicus, then vision loss can be there, corneal anesthesia can be there, as I said that if the vesicle is present over the tip or side of the nose, these corneal anesthesia might be the complication for these kind of patients, right? Keratitis can be there further. So post-herpetic neuralgia you need to think of, and then of course you can think of something like vision loss or keratitis in those patients who were having the herpes zoster ophthalmicus, who were having the herpes zoster ophthalmicus. In those patients you can think of this, right? I hope you had the clear concept about the herpes zoster. Now let's try to apply our knowledge in some of the MCQs over here. Okay, so herpes zoster singles MCQs, let's talk about them. So first question over here, they are saying that this woman particularly presents to the emergency room for a rash on her face. She reports that this rash started as a small flat red rash yesterday but progressed to a very painful rash now. Okay, she also reports some blurry vision. There were rash present on her face, remember, and she also reports some blurry vision in her right eye, and she has a past medical history of lupus and is on long-term steroids. On physical exam, she has an extensive vesicular rash on the right side of her face involving her nose and the eyes. She is admitted to the hospital for the antiviral therapy and ophthalmology is consulted. So over here what you can think of, guys, I know you are actually telling me the answer right now and you are correct over here. That is a herpes zoster ophthalmicus, because clear indications are present over there, because you can see the tip of the nose is also involved, so it can cause the corneal involvement. It can actually involve the cornea of this patient as well. So this on the right side, this is present, right eye, unilateral herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Ophthalmology consult was taken in this patient, so this is the herpes zoster ophthalmicus. So what is the answer over here, guys? Answer is clear, herpes zoster ophthalmicus, right? Herpes zoster ophthalmicus. Done. Second question over here is they are saying that 65-year-old male is evaluated in the clinic approximately 6 months after the resolution of herpes zoster outbreak on his left flank. Now he states that despite the lesions having resolved, he is still experiencing the constant burning and hypersensitivity to touch in the distribution of the old rash. I hope you are getting the point. You explain to him that this complication can occur in 20 to 30% of the patient after having the herpes zoster. You also explain that vaccination with the shingles vaccine in the individual 60 to 70 years of age can reduce the incidence of this complication. For example, the live vaccine can reduce the incidence of this complication. What kind of complication I'm talking about right now, guys? Yes, I know you got the answer. Yes, that is the post herpetic neuralgia. I told you clearly that some kind of patient, 20 to 31% of the patient, they might be experiencing this kind of burning sensation, itchiness over there at the particular rash where they had this rash particularly before the treatment. So this can be the post herpetic neuralgia. Now moving on to the next question, guys. A 75-year-old man presents to the primary care physician again with a painful rash, and he notes his side began to hurt several days prior without any visible skin changes. Okay, however, over the past 2 days a rash has developed. The patient medical history is only notable for diabetes mellitus type 2. Now he was recently started on antibiotic for the sinusitis as well. He had the sinusitis, immunocompromised status. In his spare time he goes hiking and recently returned from a hiking trip 2 days ago. He is currently sexually active also with both men and women, and his temperature is 37.2 degrees Celsius. BP is on the higher side, 154/88, pulse is fine, 83, respiration 12 per minute, oxygen saturation is fine, 98% of room air. Now physical exam is notable for the finding in the figure. And what is the most likely diagnosis over here? So many kind of things are there. Diabetic patient, have the casual sexual contact, already taking the treatment for the sinusitis as well, immunocompromised patients, and all many kind of things are present over there. Rashes also are present over there. Particular image was given for this particular question, and you know this is a particular unilateral dermatome, thoracic dermatome is involved over here, and this is the case of what? Herpes zoster. But now they are asking you human herpes virus, like A and B is already ruled out. Human herpes virus 1, 3 or 6. I told you it is also called as, yes, it is also called as human herpes virus 3. So yes, that is the answer. Okay, so they can ask you in this form also. Okay, human herpes virus 3, this is nothing but a herpes zoster. Okay, these are the shingles. So I hope you got the value from this video. If you enjoyed this video, please share with your friends, hit the like button, and let me know your views in the comment section. If you have any kind of doubt, you can leave that in the comment section too. And thank you so much for listening till this point of time, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much.